15-9412 or go to events at ppirevents.com. PPIR, professional people in real estate. Welcome. You are looking to work somewhere that treats employees like family, has a team atmosphere, and rewards your hard work. Does this sound like you? Then go to drsinstall.com. Apply today and get paid to learn a new trade while providing your family with great benefits. Visit drsinstall.com. That's drsinstall.com.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source. WOCA, Ocala.
Thank you for tuning in, everybody, and Robin.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Well, I was thinking about you because you have a friend who's a stuntman, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I have a history of pushing a broom. So there. I think those two things just came together when I was just looking at the synopsis of our next guest. All right, David Alan Arnold is on the phone. He has written a book called Help from Above. This book is doing so well on Amazon. I was just checking it out. It's getting 5-star reviews. It's currently number 33 in the aerial category out of a gazillion books on Amazon, and to be number 3 and to have all the 56 5-star ratings, 5-star ratings, right? Mm-hmm. He is an airborne cinematographer. That's kind of cool, just right there. He flies around the world for movies like James Bond, TV shows like The Deadliest Catch, the World Series, Super Bowl. He experienced floating up from his crib. What? And flying out of a window.
When he was little.
What? His latest documentary is called Sky Falling, how he went from sweeping the floor to painting the sky. I can't wait to hear this.
He's amazing.
David Alan Arnold. Good morning, David.
Robin and Larry, good morning.
Yes. Thank you for saying Robin's name first. Robin has, I don't know if you're a stuntman, but Robin has movie connections, and I have swept the floor. So
there you go.
We kind of have, between the two of us, we have something in common.
We're like brothers.
Yeah, we're bonding.
So where are you right now? Let's start with where you're calling from.
Well, I'm on my morning drive. It's a little past 7 in the morning in Los Angeles. And, I had a experience driving here the other day. I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but I was driving down the freeway in L.A., and, so it's either 10 or 12 lanes of freeway. 12 lanes. And the car on the opposite side of the freeway, the opposite direction, a car suddenly turns sideways and drives right at me. I look over and I step on the brakes because this car T-bones into the K-rail, the concrete divider between the freeway side. And the concrete gives way. This car, the back wheels go up in midair. And I step on my brakes because it looks like he's about to flip like a Matrix-style stunt upside down onto my side of the freeway. And as this is happening, I look behind him, and there's a highway patrol car. And I thought, oh, this is so convenient. This guy's having an accident. There's a policeman right here. He can take care of it. And as I'm looking at the cop car, which is still moving, the door pops open, and an arm comes out of the door with a pistol in it, pointing at the car.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh!
Gosh, that's real life. That's better than the movies.
So they were chasing him. Wow. Do you
know? I was just a little slow on the uptake. I didn't realize that the cop car behind him had probably just hit the car to get him to go sideways and to stop the car.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh. So were you able to avoid having an accident because of your skills, because of what you've done?
Well, my skills didn't really come into play. I watched this happen, and I was talking to a buddy of mine later who flies in helicopters for the news here. I said, hey, this thing happened on the freeway, and there was cops with guns and everything. And he goes, yeah.
It's just like an everyday occurrence.
It happens all the time.
Oh, that's a tourist attraction.
He probably did 6 high-speed pursuits that week in Los Angeles.
Wow.
Really? Oh, my gosh. More respect to our law enforcement officers, what they have to do to put up with the bad element. So tell me, let's start with this one about you floating out of the crib. What is that?
Yeah, that's kind of a strange experience, and I'm kind of glad that I wrote this book about my life so that, people can hear stories like that. And I don't know what it was. I just know that it's actually my earliest childhood memory is I'm in my crib and I float off the ground. So my feet come off the ground. I'm still holding the bars on the crib. My feet come off the ground and I'm being lifted up. And I just have this experience of floating out of the crib, and I'm trying to scream, but there's no sound will come out of my mouth. I'm trying to scream, and I float out the window and come around, and I float over the roof of my the house that I grew up in. And I don't know what it was. That's the end of my recollection of it.
Really?
And,
so, was it an out-of-body experience, or were you physically floating above the building, the house?
That's a great question. I mean, I'm 3. So I don't know.
So
if
you're
I
not
could,
sure.
Yeah, I mean, how much does a 3-year-old know? I knew it wasn't natural. I knew it wasn't right, and so it scared me. But I don't know. Did I imagine it? Did I dream it? My recollection is I'm standing in my crib like a prison inmate, and I'm just holding on to the bars, and I'm looking out the window. I'm staring at the driveway because I know my mom's about to come home, and that's what I would do. I just stand in there like a prisoner. And wait for my mom to come home from work and pull in the driveway.
So did that?
And that's when it happened.
Did that have an effect on you later in life, as far as your ability to maybe embrace things that are supernatural in nature? I mean, did that help you understand maybe paranormal stuff better than maybe most of us do?
That's a great question. I will say this. I've had a lot of experiences in my life, and some of this is in the book. I've had people close to me who died and had them send me messages after their death. And maybe that's why I don't really think much of it when it happens. I'm just kind of open. But I don't know. I really don't know. I know that I'm open to things, and these are stories that I would have taken to my grave. I mean, nobody would have ever known any of what I just told you if I hadn't sat down to write a book about my life and how I got here.
The part about pushing the broom and then becoming a cinematographer, that to me sounds like but in a way it's very similar to a lot of stories. It's almost like God puts us here and he expects us to first pick cotton and then become the president of the United States.
Yeah.
And somehow we do this, and I don't know if it's faith that gives us the ability to do that, or just determination, or what are your thoughts on it? How did that happen? I know I'm asking you to put something into a really short what do you call it, soundbite, but how did that happen?
Well, I mean, I don't know if President Trump ever picked cotton, but we could check.
Well, I was referring to earlier presidents, not Trump.
Oh, I get it. In my case, I'm still that same person. I started sweeping the floor, and I took it as if it was a mission from God. I didn't just sweep the floor. I swept the floor all night until the office didn't look the same. And when the boss walked in the following day, he couldn't recognize the place. It was so clean. And he had a big smile on his face. He points to me and he goes, "That's it." He goes, "You're going with me on my next movie shoot." And that was how I started to fly.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Was because I did such a good job. And to your point about, the culture of work, I'm really glad that I wrote this book, because especially for kids today who are just starting out and thinking about the world of work, what career they want to have, how they want to get there. I'm just thrilled that kids today can read my story of sweeping the floor and then moving on to big TV shows, so that they could see a path and say either A, it might remind them to be humble and just work hard and not complain, and that you might end up in a great place if you do those very simple things. And number two is it gives them maybe a pause to say, do I want to take that job at Starbucks, or do I maybe want to reach higher? Because if Dave can do it, maybe I can do it.
Well, and the one thing you've already established in the few things you've said is a work ethic. It sounds like whatever job you had, that the task at hand was taken seriously and completed in as good a way as possible, which would explain winning Emmys. I would think that was part of it.
Well, I think it's easy to assume, like, the world of television is very high tech. And the equipment that I use, the gyro-stabilized cameras that we have on helicopters, are very complicated. And I think it's easy to assume when you see all that you have to have a college degree, or you have to be just super smart, or like a genius to get to a point where you could operate a machine like that over the Super Bowl with 110 million people watching. But the reality is I started very simply, and what I brought to my career wasn't a college degree, and it's not technical skills. What I brought is what you said, a very simple work ethic. I show up on time, I work very hard, I never complain, and I make it a point to be nice to everyone that I work with.
Well, that sounds like Larry. He does that every day. I mean, he's not in life-threatening positions like you are, but...
We are brothers.
But what's really great about what you do is that, like you said, you are up there in the helicopter filming the Super Bowl, but then you're also into life-threatening situations, like
going to work.
Like the Deadliest Catch, because when I watch that show, you've got wind and rain and a hurricane, and then you actually go to film the hurricane, like Hurricane Katrina.
Oh yes, and I was watching the news of Hurricane Florence, and having witnessed the strength of Hurricane Katrina and how devastating it was, I just have an absolute respect for nature. And, when I talk to friends who are in coastal areas, I always tell them, if you know a hurricane's coming, get out of there, because you do not want to be there if that storm hits. It's just awful. So to be in a helicopter when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, it actually sidestepped New Orleans. It didn't hit the city directly. It hit other places harder. But what happened was the levees were damaged from the storm, and they didn't get them fixed. So the pumps, basically, for people who don't know, New Orleans is below sea level. And it's always been known, for 50 years or more, that they could have a terrible flood if a hurricane ever hit New Orleans. The city is below sea level, and it's surrounded by earthen dams that keep the water out. And they have pumping stations that pump the water out and keep the city dry. Well, after Hurricane Katrina, the levees were damaged. Water started to come into the city. And as the pumps failed, one after another, there was no way to get rid of the water. And so over about a 2-week period, it didn't happen right away, but slowly the water came in through the levees and crept higher and higher until it was over the roofs of the homes.
Yeah, I remember the pictures. Yeah, that was something else. The book that we're talking about, Help from Above, says Volume 1. Is there an explanation for that?
Yeah, there is. I actually wrote another book first, which isn't out yet.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and book 2 is the reason that I'm writing books. In 2013, I saw some illegal activity at a school bus stop in the little town where I live above Los Angeles. And I got involved with cleaning it up and making the school bus stop safe again for the kids. And in the process of that, what I wound up with is I got into a fight with organized crime. And this is still ongoing. And I wrote a book about my dealings with corrupt politicians, with criminals, and with law enforcement. With law enforcement that aren't enforcing the laws. This is all at a school bus stop. I wrote a book about it, and that comes out on Halloween of this year. And someone from the book industry looked at that book and said, "Dave, this is fine, but I'm sorry, you're going to have to write another book first. You have to tell people who you are and what you do." And I said, "Okay." I took that advice. Yeah, I took that advice. She said, "I'm very sorry. This is going to be a lot of work for you." But I took her advice, and I spent about a year and a half writing a book about who I am and what I do. And that book is called Help from Above. And so that book really opened me up beyond the organized crime ring to start to tell stories of my career and my life. And it's very ironic because I was such a private person before all this. If you lived next door to me, you wouldn't know that I fly in a helicopter for Deadliest Catch because I just never talked about my work before writing this book.
What do you think, if there's anything you've told us so far, or maybe something you haven't told us yet, gives you the courage to go up against organized crime? There's got to be an element of courage or of confidence, at least.
You know, it's I guess it's kind of like pushing the broom. For me, it's just very simple. I looked at, and this was a big gang. I mean, the gangsters outnumbered town residents in my little town. That's how big the gang was.
Wow.
And I looked at that, and these guys were the most dangerous people you could imagine. And I looked at that, and I said, they're smoking cigarettes, they're hurling profanity. And these are just thugs. And I looked at that and I said, this can't be at a school bus stop. I knew it wasn't legal. I found that out right away.
Yeah.
I said, this can't be at the school bus stop. And so I started to try to get law enforcement to come in and correct it. I tried to get, code enforcement, and I kept getting further and further into the local authorities to talk about this and get them to make the school bus stop safe again. And the further I got, the more I realized that this is actually an organized, criminal organization. And it includes law enforcement. It includes the officials that I'm talking to. And my neighbors were at first behind all this, but over time, as they started to notice that too, they saw right away that this was a very dangerous situation.
Really?
And,
so the corruption you referenced earlier, was that with the police or with like the county commission or whatever you have over there? I mean, well, what was the corrupt element of in the positions of authority?
Well, I started to notice things like the sheriff's department would say things like, "Well, we've never had a call there," and we would see the sheriff's cruisers there all the time.
But you're calling them now, right?
Well, yeah, we thought that's so weird. I mean, why would they say that? And when we talked to the regulators, they would tell us that business is 100% illegal. You cannot have any of that there at the school bus stop where the kids gather. And we knew all of this, but then when we would tell them, okay, well then come cite these guys or whatever, get them out of there so the kids can be safe again. We found that it wasn't happening, and then they would start to say things like, "Sorry, Dave, my hands are tied. I really want to fix this for you, but my hands are tied. I can't get involved in this one."
Really?
And we're talking about illegal activity, and so to answer your question of how to get involved in this dangerous fight against organized crime, part of it is just me being simple-minded and not ever accepting.
Were you threatened?
How it has to be.
Were you threatened?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And my neighbors were too, and they're the smart ones. So within 6 months, all the smart people in town had quit, protesting any of this because they knew that either their businesses would be harmed or, they could be killed or whatever. I'm just the one dumb guy that just couldn't.
So how did you?
I just couldn't let it go.
So how jump to the end of that story? How did you end up fixing that problem?
Oh, it's ongoing. It is.
Oh, it's not done yet.
Oh, no, it's not done. So what I've done is I wrote a book about it, and so that book comes out on Halloween.
Okay.
And so I'm going to let the readers of the book decide what happens next, because I know what should happen, and I know that it's important not only that this gets cleaned up, but also that other towns and other school bus stops are made safe from it. But I'll leave that up to the general public. If people read, and learn my experience of it and what I went through and what I witnessed, they can decide, hey, do I want to, get involved and help Dave clean this up, or is this, kind of just the way of the world and we'll just let it slide?
Does help from above imply help from God?
I'll tell you, originally the series of books was called Worth Fighting For. And there's a documentary that's been filmed about my dealings with the organized crime ring. The producer of that documentary read an early version of the books, and he said, Dave, you have to call this book Help From Above. And I said, oh, okay, I could do that. And I suspect that, and I've never asked him why. I mean, I guess one thing you'll learn from me, especially if you read the book, is I take advice. So when someone tells me to write a book, I write a book. If someone tells me the book should be called Help From Above, that's what I name the book. And so I never asked him why. I would guess, because he read all these stories, it had to do with he could see like a helping hand from someone we can't see, in my life.
Yeah. Well, and going back to the rising out of the crib story, I don't know. To me, that sounds like a God thing. It sounds like you were, drifting off and God put you back. If that makes sense. I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know either. I'm not a religious person, and especially, when I've had messages from people who've passed away, it's happened several times. There's always eyewitnesses. So when you read the stories in Help From Above, you'll see 2 times that people reach back to me after their death and send me a message, or in one case, my friend died, and a week after his death, he sent me life-changing information that I never would have known. And so I don't really tell people what to think about it. I just tell them what's happening, and in the case of my friend, when he sent his message back, it included court documents, it included arrest records.
Wow.
And it was witnessed. Another person was there and saw all of that. And so I don't really say what it is or what to think about it. I just explain it as it happens. You get to, kind of like you're watching a movie. You get to see what happened there, and then you can decide, well, was it a ghost? Like you said, is it a God thing? Or, I let everyone decide on their own what to think of it or what to make of it.
Yeah.
And you're very emotional and very caring about your community, and that must find its way into your cinematography that you do. How do you keep your emotions in check when you're flying over devastation and you have to report this news, all of the visual images that are not so pretty sometimes?
Well, it's not easy because I'm not a news cameraman. I have done news. In the case of Hurricane Katrina, they closed the airspace over New Orleans after the storm. And so only one news helicopter was allowed to fly over the city. And I happened to be in it. But I don't normally shoot news. So I'm not accustomed to looking down and seeing, thousands of people suffering. And so I'm really not I don't have good defenses against that stuff. I'm just a human. So it affects me personally if I see something like that.
There's so many different aspects of this particular book that are very fascinating. Can I ask a question about the task of flying a helicopter in those circumstances? Does the advent of the drone as we know it today help in those circumstances, or does it interfere? Does somebody lose a job in a helicopter because now we have drones?
No, not really. If we didn't have drone technology during Hurricane Katrina, but if we had had it, it would have been almost impossible to use because you just couldn't go anywhere. So the only place you could fly your drone from was where you were standing. And you could fly it around there and do that. But then once you've done that, you're talking about an entire city that is without power.
Yeah.
So how do you even charge your batteries, for your drone?
Good point. Yeah.
So were you the guy that filmed the James Bond movie commercial with the Queen in it?
No, I did a scene for James Bond, The World Is Not Enough, and in the movie you'll see there's a villainous lair, and it's in an oil production area that we actually filmed in Azerbaijan. And so James Bond is driving his super awesome BMW sports car through those roads, and that's me in the helicopter flying next to him with our movie camera.
Wow.
That is so cool. Well, be careful. You're driving right now. Let's see. Do we have the book here?
No,
we don't have the
arrived
book
yet. But
now, I did find it on Amazon. Do you have a website you want to recommend?
Oh, yes, absolutely, and thank you. They can go to my website is www.davidallenarnold.com, and Allen is ALAN, davidallenarnold.com.
Okay.
And you have a new documentary coming out, Skyfalling?
There is. So basically, once book 2 goes public on Halloween, because I name names in the book, once that happens, the documentary will then be freed up to tell the story, because we filmed everything as it happened.
Ooh, then the sky will be falling for sure. Oh, I hope you stay safe. I hope that it doesn't have repercussions for you.
Well, as far as staying safe goes, I really believe that human beings are made for adventure. So. I appreciate the thought. Thank you very much. But the reality is I didn't really come here to do safe things. I came here to do other stuff. So,
nice.
I'm happy to take this challenge on, because at the end of it, if I get what I want, it'll be a school bus stop that's a lot safer.
That's awesome. I love that. And that's what everybody wants, is the world to be safer. David Allen Arnold, it's been an honor to talk to you. Thank you for being on the show with us today. Good luck with everything.
Larry and Robin, thank you so much. It's wonderful to talk to you guys.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Here is your 1-minute news brief. Weather professionals are keeping a watch on several disturbances in the Atlantic Ocean. Tropical storm Kirk may gain some strength the next few days. A broad area of low pressure southwest of Bermuda has been given a medium chance of developing, and subtropical near the told a television station and sheriff's deputies that he was going to shoot down the sheriff's helicopter. And WOCA